Welcome into another playoff edition of Daily Faceoff Live, streaming live on the DFO YouTube, and of course, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We're looking for your inbox questions over in the YouTube, and we are going to talk a lot of playoffs today. Stephen Ellis coming up in a little bit to talk Leafs Panthers in a big Game 5. But first, Frank, we're going to kick off the show with a little bit of news from the coaching carousel in the NHL. You're reporting about, half an hour ago that it sounds like the Flyers and Rick Tocchet are getting close.
Yeah, they're in the final strokes of this negotiation to land Rick Tocchet as head coach. Not officially official yet, but definitely trending in that direction. I don't have any hesitation that this is a deal that will come together, and it's going to be a massive deal at that. I'm expecting at least a 5-year deal and north of $25 million in total value. So a big step up from the Philadelphia Flyers to go out and get the guy that they believe is their number one target and the guy that can help return this franchise to glory, because it's kind of feels like it's been since Rick Tocchet was a player, the early 2000s. Yes, there was a run when the Flyers did get to the Stanley Cup final in 2010. But it's mostly been in fits and starts for this organization since then. And they're looking to take steps forward. They're looking to get back on track and a return to not just glory, but the first step in that process is relevance. So Rick Tocchet will certainly be a name that reverberates in the Philadelphia market. And with the term and dollars that they're giving him, they clearly have their sights set on him being a long-term solution for this team.
Stability, the word, and with Danny Briere as the GM and now Tocchet, are all signs indicating Tocchet will be behind the bench for the foreseeable future. I like that with that young core kind of coming in. They have this one, or the two pillars, I should say, of stability in their front office and behind the bench. He returns to the organization that drafted him in 1983. He played north of 500 games for the Philadelphia Flyers when you include the playoffs as well. Frank, is it fair to say that Tocchet kind of also always had his eye on the Flyers? Like, were they his number one choice? Did he have other options?
He definitely had other options, pending offers from Seattle, I think from Boston. I think there were other teams that were also in the mix. The Anaheim Ducks, he was a finalist for. Look, I think he had plenty of choices. Could have also went and been a 7-figure analyst for TNT. So he had tons of choice. I think the Flyers, for a lot of different reasons. I mean, look, you mentioned his playing career. He's in their Hall of Fame. This is a guy who has deep ties to the organization. And beyond that, there's a lot of trust that he has in the hierarchy of the front office, in his close relationship with Keith Jones going back to their playing days. So this is an organization that he knows, a market that he understands, and a front office that he has trust with. It checks a lot of those boxes. I think the one big thing missing is that, look, unlike Vancouver, where they got to Game 7 and were close to getting to the West Final last year, this Flyers team is probably multiple steps away. And so he has to see that vision as well in order to be the guy that accepts this role.
Let's talk a little bit more about how this Flyers team could look to build real quick. Not to do the full offseason preview now, but Danny Briere has 7 draft picks in the first 2 rounds this upcoming June. He's got $24 million in cap space with pretty close to a full roster already under contract. Does this Tocchet hiring indicate that maybe the Flyers are ready to push down on the gas a little bit here this summer?
I think it does. I don't think they have any designs on, as good as the 2026 draft is, being in a position to be a lottery team. They want to take an important, significant step forward. I think they're going to leverage those draft picks that they have to try and make trades. I think they're going to be out there as well, trying to spend some of that cap space and utilize and leverage that. They've never been a team that's afraid to spend, as evidenced by this hiring. And I expect a significantly aggressive summer for the Flyers from that standpoint.
Let's stick on coaching for a second. Allow me to throw you the biggest underhand lob of all underhand lobs when it comes to hosting. What else you hearing, Frank?
I mean, a lot. I would expect that with Rick Tocchet off the board, that a lot of these teams, I mean, this is a pretty appropriate breakdown of the tiers that these guys are in. I would expect that there's going to be a run on coaches here in the next few days, with teams not wanting to be left holding the bag. Rick Tocchet off the board. We mentioned Joel Quenneville in Anaheim. Of course, Mike Sullivan was also in that shot caller category, him going to the Rangers. Now what? What's next? I would imagine that Jay Woodcroft is the next guy off the board, and I would point toward the Boston Bruins as being a real strong fit. But then you've got some other really interesting candidates, including some that their teams are still playing that teams are waiting to find out. And the other thing too is now with Rick Tocchet in Philly, is Adam Foote getting another head coaching job, or is his top defensive assistant coming with him to the Flyers?
Yeah, very interesting to see what happens in Vancouver. So there's still 5 vacancies around the NHL officially, you could say, with Pittsburgh, Chicago, Vancouver, Boston, and Seattle. And then I guess the one that we're just kind of keeping an eye on out in the corner is the New York Islanders, obviously, as they
and the
continue
LA Kings.
And the LA Kings. That's a good point with Jim Hiller. So it's at 5 right now. Could balloon up to 7. We'll see how things break in the next couple of days. But the big story today is that the Philadelphia Flyers have landed Rick Tocchet. Let's go to the Stanley Cup playoffs, Frank, where last night it was Mikael Granlund landing a hat trick for the Dallas Stars. He shoots Dallas to a big, big Game 4 win. They have a 3-1 stranglehold. And listen, watching this game, this first one goes in. I know Hellebuyck kind of talked post-game about how, the stick kind of came at a weird angle and it hit the defenseman, whatever. You see this one go in from outside of the top of the circles, and from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, you're sitting there basically going, God damn, we're doing this again tonight.
I just think it's incredibly deflating. And I know that Connor Hellebuyck isn't the sole reason that they lost this game to go down 3-1 to the Dallas Stars, the first career playoff hat trick from Mikael Granlund. But in every moment where they've had a chance to have him prop up the team to make them feel good, I just, the wind has been let out of their sails. And I've mentioned this many times before, he is allowed to make a save. It's just the truth. Like, even in crazy sequences and circumstances, that's always appropriate and okay. And you're going to get beat. You're going to have shots go in that you didn't expect, or weird fluky bounces. And all those things are facts of life for a goalie in the NHL, but he just hasn't made enough saves. And that's really the bottom line when it comes to how this Winnipeg Jets playoff run has unfolded. And unfortunately, it's also come at a time when this Jets offense has really dried up.
Well, and I mean, the home road splits are just staggering, Frank. On home ice in these playoffs, the Jets are 5-1, and they're outscoring their opposition on an average of 3.67 to 2.17. As soon as they go on the road, 0-5, and they're getting outscored 5 goals to 1.6. Like, that contrast is crazy, and the special teams are basically the same on either side. So it's not just like a red hot power play or an ice cold penalty kill on the road or anything like that. And Hellebuyck was asked about this last night after the game. It's like, hey, when you guys head out on the road, does it almost feel like you're fighting 2 battles? You're trying to beat the other team, but you're also trying to beat yourself. And Hellebuyck almost didn't even have a great answer for it. But from a Jets perspective here, with your backs against the wall, I guess the good news would be you have 2 of the final 3 games in this series at the MTS Center in Winnipeg. The bad news is you are going to have to win on the road if you want any hope of staying alive.
Yeah, and the other bad news is Jake Ottinger has been nearly flawless in both home or road. So, look, I thought it was a fantastic quote from him to close out last night's game. He said, aside from winning the Stanley Cup, my number one goal is to be the starting goalie for Team USA in the 2026 Olympics. He's making an important, huge statement in this playoff run again that he's a clutch performer. We're seeing Paul Paduti had a great story today on Daily Faceoff about the golden age of playoff performers. Add Jake Ottinger to the list. Like, his Game 7 numbers are impeccable. His overall career playoff numbers are really good. This guy has not wilted at any turn, and it's just in stark contrast to the guy that he served as backup to for 4 Nations. The tough part about figuring out Connor Hellebuyck is that for the first, half of his playoff career, he was lights out. He was so good in his playoff runs. And it's just that the last few years, there's this clear mental block where anything that's going wrong, anything that could go wrong is going wrong. And the issues that he's having seem to reside totally within his own ears.
It is, again, just staggering to see. And they get through round 1 almost in spite of it. And here in round 2, the goaltending disparity just feels like it's a little bit too much for the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, like you said,
I was going to say, I just think it feels like a missed opportunity, doesn't it? Like you had this chance, and again, he's not the sole reason they lost game 4, but you had this chance to start Eric Comrie, give your team a spark, have things feel a little bit different. You're always going back to Hellebuyck for game 5 in your building. Now you can't play that card. It's over. You're stuck with what you've got.
Yeah. Let's go to an elimination game tonight, Frank, in Vegas. The Edmonton Oilers have a chance to close out the Vegas Golden Knights. And Frank, this is something the Oilers have actually been traditionally really, really good in. If you take out game 7s, when the Oilers have a chance to finish off a team in game 4, 5, or 6, they do not miss. They are 8-0 in the Connor McDavid era when they have a chance to finish teams off in that situation. So it's going to be a tough task tonight for Vegas. But if I was looking for maybe some positivity from a Vegas perspective, they very rarely ever lose 3 straight games at the Fortress. And after dropping the first 2 early on in this series, I mean, at some point you're going to win a home game. I don't know how much else, though, just based on what I've seen from this series, other than just knocking on wood and saying, hope we don't lose a 3rd straight home game. I'm not sure what the positive signs are for Vegas.
Do you know what today is?
May 14th.
May 14th, the 2-year anniversary of the Vegas Golden Knights eliminating the Edmonton Oilers in Rogers Place. You don't think the Edmonton Oilers are going to hear about that before the game tonight? I could almost guarantee it. They've got a chance to write the different story, to make life easy on themselves, to get a short series before, opening the Western Conference Final. And yeah, I'm looking a couple steps ahead, but that's because I believe with the stats that you mentioned, this team is really well positioned to do so. And I think with the way that they've played, like they completely dominated Vegas in game 4. They dominated Vegas for 50 minutes of game 1. They have had huge, significant stretches of this series that the play has been so lopsided and in their favor. And it's not just coming off of the shutout, but the Vegas Golden Knights have struggled to score. Where have their top players been? The fact that we've gotten to this point in the playoffs and Jack Eichel has 1 goal, I mean, it's a little bit shocking. So I'm with you. I'm not seeing a ton of signs for Vegas to try and dig out of this. There's not really much to hang your hat on. It's not in the goaltending department. As much as they had an advantage heading into this series with that, their defense has been okay and they can't score. It's kind of been a tough look all the way around.
Yeah, it's actually pretty staggering. I know we were looking at that Aiden Hill Stuart Skinner comparison, and like their numbers are actually getting relatively close. And at the end of tonight, there's a very real possibility that Stuart Skinner's playoff numbers are all of a sudden better than Aiden Hill's, which would be crazy. I know the sample size games played is obviously different. And I see Josh in the chat saying, did Tyler just say if we don't talk about game 7s before giving his stat? And okay, sure. In fairness, then, even if you include the Oilers game 7s, they're 8-2 when the other team has a chance to be eliminated. So again, Oilers traditionally pretty good in situations when they have a chance to finish off the other team.
I was going to say 2 things. One, I think the amazing part about this Oiler playoff run and where we're at this juncture is that they've probably looked better than they have at any point in the McDavid Draisaitl era, which is kind of amazing to think about. And then when you layer in where this team started at the beginning of the playoffs, the question marks and how poorly they looked against the LA Kings and their season appeared to be on the ropes, just kind of underlines and highlights how incredible that first statement is.
Yeah. All right, let's get to an offseason preview quickly. We're kicking these off, Frank, every day taking a look at a different team around the NHL and what the next, call it 3 months, 4 months could hold for them. And today we're starting at the bottom of the league with the San Jose Sharks. And I will say, despite the fact they finished dead last in the NHL, the vibes are good. I actually think in the last year, they've really changed my perception of the rebuild. When you look at sort of the 4 pillars they have in their prospect pool / on their roster, it's like, okay, you got Celebrini and Smith, the duo up front. Sam Dickinson at some point is coming from the OHL, and his numbers are just dropping. And then they made the save for Yaroslav Askarov. Love that they added a veteran like Tyler Toffoli to help out the young guys. Like, to me, this is an offseason where if you're the Sharks, I want to see them make another big splash here. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of picks.
I agree. Part of it is that the San Jose Sharks just need time. Like Sam Dickinson appears to be an incredibly special defenseman. And then, I think we've liked the steady and slow progress from someone like Shakir Mukhamadullin. That said, I think, part of it with the Sharks is they've got to get to a stage where losing isn't acceptable. I know that sounds funny to say because it's a professional sports team, but find a team in the league that had more fun last year as a last place team. And as enticing as that environment might be, I don't necessarily love the optics of that. It kind of felt very country clubby, like, hey, this is easy. Life is good. It's okay to be in 32nd place. To take that next step, you're going to need other guys that come into that room that highlight that. And it's not to turn it dark and gloomy and John Tortorella-y and negative. It's just that can't be the case moving forward. That's not the standard that the San Jose Sharks want to set. And I think that part, breaking free from it, is going to be a pretty tough thing because results matter. And they've got a 40-point turnaround to go to get to where they want to get to.
Yeah. Again, long hill to kind of climb here. Can I give you one name who I'd like to see him go after, though? Defenseman, if he shakes loose, Bowen Byram, pending RFA. That's a guy who I look at and it's like, okay, he wants to be a number one defenseman on a team. You have the money in the cap space right now. If you want to pay him and Buffalo's not going to pay him, or however that plays out, you got picks if you need to go acquire him. Like, I don't know. I think a guy like Byram and adding a real good defenseman to that top four, it's going to make life easier when you're trying to bring guys like Dickinson up into the NHL to insulate them a bit. I'd like to see him go get a stud blue liner to add to the group.
Yeah, I just wouldn't expect a team like the Sharks to be in the mix for an offer sheet. I'm going to write something about it probably next week, but you have to remember how disincentivized bad teams are from putting those picks on the table. Because you go out and you mentioned Buffalo. Let's say you go out and you want to target JJ Peterka with an offer sheet. How could you possibly put your number one pick on the table as an enticement in an offer sheet compensation, knowing that could be Gavin McKenna or Keaton Verhoff, or pick a top end player from the special 2026 draft class? That's one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't thinking offer sheet with Byram either. It was like I go and trade for him from the Buffalo Sabres. Again, he's an RFA. Who knows what his future is there. Let's continue along, though. Let's get back to the Stanley Cup playoffs, Frank, and talk a little Leafs Panthers with Stephen Ellis. It's a presentation of Budweiser. Budweiser is encouraging buds to make time for playoffs, not excuses. Every goal, every check, every win is better enjoyed with your buds. So phone a bud or text a bud and call out their excuses for bailing on the playoffs. After all, it's the most wonderful time of the year. So make it count. When it's springtime, it's go time with Budweiser. Stephen Ellis is a man that wears many hats for us here at Daily Faceoff. Not only is he our prospect analyst, and usually we're talking prospects with you, Stephen, but you were also on the road covering the Leafs-Panthers series, games 3 and 4, where the Panthers seemed to grab back momentum. So let's start there. What was missing from the Leafs game in those two down in Florida that was there earlier on in the series? And do you think they can get something back now that they're on home ice?
I think the one word for that would be intensity. And you look at that, like Austin Matthews, he's playing well defensively, but you're not paying him bazillions of dollars to be a good defensive forward out there. You're paying him to score. You look at Mitch Marner wasn't as effective. William Nylander wasn't that game breaker that we saw. Max Pacioretty started the series really good, has had good numbers, but didn't get that secondary scoring going for them. I did like what John Tavares did. I liked what Joseph Woll did in that second game. I thought that he played outstanding after it felt like every shot was going in the game before. And to be fair, I think it was like 3 goals that bounced off of defensemen in front. Like, that's terrible luck. But it just, as a team that just did not look like they were working together, they were not working anywhere as hard as the Panthers were, and they took way too many penalties. When you take 4 in that opening game, or the opening period of game 4, you just lose all your momentum. And you saw the shot count there for a long time was so dominant in Florida's favor, and that momentum carried on.
All right, let's play a little Frank or fiction. Wednesday night's game 5 for the Toronto Maple Leafs is the most significant, consequential game for the organization in 2+ decades.
No. And I'm not, I know people have been saying that. what's the reasoning for that? I'm not even sure at this point. Like
okay.
You would argue.
Let me state my case. I'll say that it is because if the Toronto Maple Leafs win and they go up 3-2 and they have two separate shots to close out the defending champion Panthers, what sets up on the other side of the bracket could be a ticket to the Stanley Cup final.
Fine. I see that, but I don't know. You look at the series 2 years ago where it looked like the Leafs had just all that momentum going and they fell apart completely and they just couldn't, they couldn't, like, I would also argue maybe game 3 was even more important. And part of that was just to kind of show that you can keep that momentum alive. And you win those 2 games, you win that third one, different story. I think they win in the game 4 and they actually could have swept. But I think now the momentum's all gone. So I guess that argument holds up. But
that's why it's important.
Yeah.
That's why it's so critically important, because I don't think if they lose, I think if they lose this game 5, that there's almost zero chance that they're beating the Cats in game 6 in Florida.
Okay. Yeah, no, fair enough. I'll agree with you on that one then.
I mean, I wasn't trying to beat you down. I was just saying in general, like, I think this is this is year 9 of the Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner playoff experience. 9. Like, if not now, and if not in this moment to take charge and write a different story for this core of players, when is it ever going to be?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, you look at it, they've made a coaching change. They've made a GM change. They've really improved that depth. Their goaltending is in the best state it's been a long time. Like, this felt like the year, if they were going to get it done, it had to be this year. And the way they started the series, it looks very promising. Obviously, things kind of fell apart there, but I think a lot of that goes to that playoff experience that Florida has. And, when they need to, they can just shut teams down. And Sergei Bobrovsky has shown a lot of issues this postseason. But then it seems like every time he plays a bad game, he bounces back with one of the best games you've seen of any goalie in the playoffs. So I think you got to give a lot of credit to Florida there, but Toronto's big stars need to show up, especially Austin Matthews, who just has done a whole lot of nothing with the puck.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit in their forward group. It's just from the line rushes and reading dailyfaceoff.com. Seems like Matthews and Marner are sticking together. Is that the right call, you think, from Craig Berube, or do you think it's maybe time to jumble things up a bit in that forward group to try get some other players going?
I don't think, like, when it comes to Matthews, I don't think him playing, if anybody, would really make a huge difference here, because it looks like he's just playing hurt. Like, you watch him in warmups, he's not taking those hard shots that we're used to seeing. He's not playing with just this ability to take over in the offensive zone. So there's that. We do know there is going to be some game time decisions here. Looks like we could see Nick Robertson back in the lineup, which would be very important for this team. I think when it comes to Robertson, as poor as he could be at points, he seems to play better when he returns to the lineup from a couple game stretch. Like, this is a guy that's got that motivation. But the one player here, you look at deep in that lineup, Bobby McMann has just done a whole lot of nothing in this series. Now, he's a big body player, so he is at least being a bit physical, but you're used to him being just one of those secondary scorers that can bring that energy. And we just haven't seen that from him, where he's got no points. So, you want the depth to score there too, but Austin Matthews needs to finally figure this out, and I'm not sure he will.
One additional candidate to return to the lineup tonight is David Kampf, who hasn't played in 6 weeks. Actually, his last game was against the Panthers on April 2nd. If they decide to go the Kampf route, which it seems like it's trending in that direction, what could we expect, and what would be the reasoning for putting him back in?
They need a guy who could be defensively responsible out there and could kill penalties and do a whole lot of those other things there. Like, I don't know if he is the right guy to put in the lineup there, but like, that's someone who you look at the contract, and that was never a good deal to sign. He's a very replaceable player on this team, but he's a smart player, doesn't have any high-end skill, but he will at least get the puck out of his own zone, and he'll block shots, and he'll do things like that. So that's what he'd bring to the table here.
I said I'd ask you one about the World Championship. Steven, Canada's off to a 3-0 start. Sidney Crosby, Macklin Celebrini, both looking good. Is Canada the favorite? And if yes, who's the biggest threat to them at the Worlds?
Canada is definitely the best team here. They've got 3 goalies that have looked really good. It was nice to see Marc-Andre Fleury, Celebrini, Crosby, Bo Horvat. They're all looking really good right now. Sweden is probably the team that's going to be the toughest. They will play each other later in this tournament, and that will be very important. One team that's not looking so good right now, as I have a screen with 5 hockey games on, is USA. They were winning 5-2 over Norway. It is now 5-4. Jeremy Swayman is having maybe the worst goalie performance I've seen at this tournament. He allowed 3 goals on 3 shots in the second. And Norway, a team that's getting all their offense from 19-year-old Stian Solberg, a first-round pick from Anaheim last year, is making them look a little scared right now.
All right. You absolute sicko, Steven. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
People who don't like this tournament don't like fun. That's what I'm going to say.
All right. There you go. Away goes Steven Ellis. When you ask Steven Ellis to join in, he says, I'll do it, but you need to ask me a question about the Worlds. You got to follow through on it. Let's go to our daily face-off inbox question, Frank. Hashtag askdfo. We got a Bruins fan in the chat here who wanted to ask a little bit about the Bruins' plans to find a centerman. They said the Bruins have all these picks in the next few rounds, or in the first 2 rounds of the drafts the next few years. Do you think they'll use them to try select a centerman or use them to try trade for a centerman, Frank?
My guess would be to try and select a centerman because they've had some pretty decent luck doing that later in rounds. I think the tough part about trying to figure out the Boston Bruins center position is that the team itself, the front office, doesn't seem to indicate that it's as big a need as I see on paper, as many see. And I think that part is tough to balance. Like, if they don't see it as a huge need, how aggressive would they be in going out to fill it unless they're just playing coy?
Yeah, I see your point there. Let's get to our daily bets brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION. If you want to get in on the Stanley Cup Playoffs, Bet365 is the spot to do it. From game props, player props, totals, and money line, you can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, and of course, the Stanley Cup champion. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. An official partner of the Stanley Cup Playoffs, must be 19 or older. A couple of plays for tonight. Zach Hyman is starting to play a lot with Connor McDavid at 5-on-5 again, so I like jumping on him at plus 210 to find the back of the net tonight. And honestly, the Oilers and Leafs are both underdogs this evening. I kind of like just playing the 2 underdogs in these games. I think they're both going to be really close, but then give me the plus money. Also, I like the over 6 between Florida and Toronto. It's set at an even 6, so you always got the chance at a push, and I think the Leafs offense will find a way to wake up at home here. Frank, what do you make of the 2 dogs in Game 5 of their series?
I would say 0 chance on parlaying the 2 of them together.
You don't think it's an all-Canadian night? I'm looking right now, too, at the updated Stanley Cup odds on Bet365. The Dallas Stars, with their win last night, just got the edge over the Edmonton Oilers. It's plus 260 for Dallas, plus 290 for Edmonton, plus 325 for Carolina, the other team up 3-1 in their series. Game 5 of their series is going tomorrow.
Not enough value. Not anywhere close to enough value.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially like before the conference finals to be getting those numbers. Don't love it. Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. A disappointing night, obviously, last night for Mark Scheifele and the Winnipeg Jets, but I got a chuckle out of his interaction with Blake Wheeler on the Sportsnet panel.
Much for doing this. First question from your buddy and former teammate, Blake Wheeler.
Hey, Scheif, how we doing, pal?
Wheeler! I don't know where that comes from, but I also laughed at Blake Wheeler asking a question about the power play and Mark Scheifele going like, I love you, Wheels, but I'm not telling you. And it's like, Blake Wheeler was on that power play like 2 years ago. He could probably just give you the insight himself.
Yeah, love the addition to the panel, by the way. I think his personality would work really well with TV, and I think he's got a lot to say and lots of interesting viewpoints, and hope to see him get comfortable to the point where we get a lot of that out of him, because I always found him to be a really insightful and honest subject for an interview.
Yeah, the U.S. broadcasts always have amazing panels. This year up in Canada, I mean, even Jake Allen, a current player, has been appearing on the panel a little bit, which I found cool to kind of get his insight into things.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's see what the next generation of hockey media looks like, being led by PK Subban, who I think he's done a great job. I think he's grown so much in his broadcast role. I think he really struggled to start, and I think the work that he's put in since then has been clearly evident. And Chris Pronger, also a new guide to the broadcast world, he did a pretty good job on ESPN as well.
Yeah, I saw some of the clips of Pronger. That was really good. All right, that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, we could be talking about one team that has been eliminated, another team that'll be pushed to the brink of elimination. And then there's also 2 elimination games tomorrow night in the NHL. Should be great stuff. Enjoy your Wednesday, everybody. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.